Why you should have your own website with Brian Flanagan-Arthurs. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by MacVoices Live, our weekly live panel discussion of what is going on in the Apple space, as well as the larger tech world, and how it is impacting you. Join us live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, or whatever time that is wherever you are, at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV, and participate in the chat, or catch the edited and segmented versions of the show on the regular MacVoices channels and feeds. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we have something just a little bit different tonight. I want to welcome Brian Flanigan-Arthurs to MacVoices, but to MacVoices, not to MacVoices Live. I think this is the first time, Brian.
I think so. We've had the holiday gift guides a couple of times, but yeah, first time otherwise.
Yeah. So I'm delighted to have you and to have a reason to talk to you that I think will benefit a lot of folks. So I'll just do a quick intro as to what we're talking about. We're going to talk about why you need a website of your own and maybe the process that you can go through as you're considering it, making your choices about what software to use, what hosts to use and all. One of the big things we're hearing right now, and have been hearing now for weeks, is the whole TikTok thing and the big protests about people that have built their businesses on TikTok. And if TikTok were to go away, their business pretty much goes away completely. This is something we've talked about for years on and off as Twitter/X came and went, as Facebook kind of came and went, as all the other social media platforms out there came and went, as places where people were trying to build businesses. There's just nothing like having control of your content. And use those platforms to promote it, no question about that. But just be able that if you got the rug pulled out from under you on any of those, you still have a place where you can send your followers or communicate with your followers if they really care and you care. And that's your own website. That's why MacVoices has its own website. That's where I want to host the content. I do use other services to distribute the content. And so Brian decided that he wanted a website. We'll talk about why in a minute. And I thought it would be great to talk to him just about what his thought processes were. So Brian, that's the introduction to it. The first obvious question, you've been on MacVoices now for a while. You've had at least a few social media presences that I'm aware of. Why did you decide it was finally time to have a website of your very own?
Sure. Well, in thinking about that, one thing that I like to do is I do a lot of presentations for especially focused in aspects of economics and education. And I present them to groups of people who are more or less they're teachers or educators, people connected in K-12 education. And at the end of the presentation, sometimes people want to connect, they'll have questions, they want to get more information. And over the years, my co-presenters and I have created a few different presentations that we like to share. And as a result, not everybody uses the same social medias. With email, if you ask somebody to just directly email you, we have to worry so much about spam and those types of things and worrying about what could be, almost like fraudulently trying to contact you. So in considering all of those things, that's what really pushed me to wanting to direct people to a website. It would have the one-stop shop of having exactly, in this case, different presentations that I offer when I might be presenting in the future, and having an outlet that's very controlled as far as being able to reach out to me through a contact form in that way. Like you mentioned, there's still other outlets that I utilize, and other social media presences. But I figured, in this day and age, it seems like there's so many different, some folks will enjoy using one social media, but not the other. And so if you're primarily posting on one and not the others, or regularly checking, you don't want to ignore people at the same time for people who might want to reach out to you, because you may not be either on that social media, it may be dormant, or you just may not check it as often. So for all those reasons, that kind of led me to wanting to kind of have that one-stop shop as a website. Yeah.
Social media is a challenge right now because you're right. Some people prefer one, some people prefer the other. Some have become politicized to varying degrees. And so people, in protest, they leave that. And that means they leave the potential connection you had with them. So it just makes sense to have your own website where you're the one in control and you can distribute that to anyone. And then it doesn't matter what platform they're on. If they have a browser, they can get to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let's start from the top. That means you decide you want a website. You have to have a domain. How did you go about picking your domain, and where did you go to purchase your domain?
Sure. So with regards to how I chose it, in all my social media presences that I use, I tend to use Brian8944, and it has origins back to my childhood. But what's important, I guess, for this purpose is it's relatively short. I know there's variations of spelling Brian, but it's easy enough to just Brian8944.com. I decided on that, where it's again something I can reference to people. I can post it. It's easy to see from that angle. With regards to purchasing the domain, and I am continuously learning. I feel that I know a drop in the bucket in the sea of knowledge when it comes to websites. And I actually reached out to Mike Potter, and I asked him. As a result, I know he, his connections with websites, and I believe in how much he helped out with MacVoices websites. And when you were mentioning that, it kind of allowed me to make sure I'm going to go right to Mike and ask him. So he was kind enough to reference. He suggested a couple places to go to search for, where to go to purchase that domain. And I ended up with GoDaddy. And I believe I went ahead and upfront purchased it for 3 years. And so I saw a little bit of a break in the price. I thought 3 years is a good enough amount of time where I can, remind myself to re-up, as necessary. And but it's still a good amount of time to be able to kind of toy with it a little bit, play with it, see what's out there. I don't feel rushed. In my line of work, there's some ebbs and flows of how busy I get sometimes at different parts of the year, as I'm sure we all do. And so I didn't want something shorter, like a year, for example, where I didn't want to run out of time and not be able to both forgetting to re-up it, or on the other hand, not have time to fully experience and dive into different options and learn new things about how to run a website.
That makes sense. And usually all the registrars are very good about reminding you or letting you set up an automatic renewal. But there is something to be said for, okay, I've got it. Stick a diary on your calendar for 3 years from now, assuming you'll still be using the same calendar program, and it'll take care of itself. But yeah, GoDaddy's a great choice.
Thank you. Yeah.
So the next step is trying to figure out what software you want to use, and there's so many great options out there. Some of them are you might consider standalone. Some of them are as part of a package from a hosting company. Things like Squarespace, they have their own proprietary situation. Wix does too. WordPress seems to be the 800-pound gorilla in the room because a large percent of the internet runs on WordPress sites, either hosted as part of a hosting package or just somebody buys it standalone and then sticks it somewhere. What did you choose, and where did you and how did you go about making those decisions?
Sure. Just want to credit Mike again on that. He referred me to checking out WordPress, and I hear them in the news, and you're right, it's so popular, of a brand, and there's something to be said for that. It shows that there's a lot of it's a product that is relatively easy to jump into with minimal understanding. There's a lot of tutorial videos that you can find online, and when you're trying to learn something, but it also offers that entry level. I'm trying to remember the terminology. I believe it's blocks that they use, where you essentially just build the website using different block templates that are really useful, and that's what kind of directed me more towards WordPress. Yeah.
So, pardon me. So, am I hearing you say that you were the one that built the website, that you designed it and built it?
I did. Yeah. Just kind of played around with it. I had a little bit of time when I was able to toy around with it, and it's definitely a work in progress. There's ideas that I have that I'll change things around, and I'm still learning more of the flows of how I want to update and on what regular basis I want to do that. I feel that's an important aspect to have some sort of a scheduled update system, but that's where I'm at right now. But yeah, it's something from scratch. To an extent, I think it shows.
Brian, I got some bad news for you. It's going to be a constant work of progress. I don't think any of us are ever satisfied with our sites. There's always like, yeah, well, if I could just tweak this, or I could just add that, I guess it's just the way we all are.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've decided on the software. How about the hosting?
To my understanding, I believe that's also through WordPress.com.
Okay. So you went with WordPress.com. So you get rid of the hassles of trying to figure out some of the back end maintenance all because they do that as part of their package.
Yeah, which is really convenient. Again, at the age of into it with minimal knowledge, it's something I wanted, that easy to have hosted that way. Yeah.
Now, at the risk of asking you to reveal just a little bit of finance, did you just go for one of the low-level packages, or because for those who don't know about WordPress.com, they have options that are basically free, but as you wouldn't be surprised, they're very limited. Then you can upgrade, to different levels and get more themes and more capabilities. So did you jump up a little bit in the ranks, or did you just start out at the very basic bottom?
I did look at the very basic one, and I was considering it. But I decided to go ahead, and I believe it's the second from the bottom tier. And I don't mind disclosing, I believe it's around, to my knowledge, it was between 45 and 60 a year, I think, is what I believe it is.
Yeah, which is really pretty reasonable for what they give you.
Yeah. And again, for this first year, it allows me, I think, a little bit of time to kind of play in that sandbox to kind of see what that does offer. And as I become more knowledgeable or find different uses for the website, maybe it'll lead me to updating and upgrading that package. Or it's possible to go backwards, I suppose, too, and go down. But I think that it was a happy medium of being able to not break the bank on it, but at the same time, being able to have enough features to be able to learn. That's one of the things, too. I'm coming into it with no knowledge. And, from there, just being able to, see how building a website happens, what's involved, how it works. And I thought that was a happy medium for that.
Listen, I really applaud you, because you didn't necessarily go to a contractor and say, hey, build me a site. You wanted to get your hands dirty a little bit. And because that was the way that I got into it. I had somebody help me a little bit, and then learned a little more, experimented. Eventually I did go, and the contractor I went to was Mike, because I had some specific things that I wanted that were beyond my capabilities. But bottom line is, there's nothing like getting your hands dirty, because then you start to understand how the websites are built. And when you look at someone else's, you have some idea of maybe what it took to get some of that stuff in there, and why certain compromises are often made just out of convenience or just realistic expectations.
Exactly. Yeah. It does when you do go to different websites now, it does give you a deeper level of appreciation of, what's involved, and how things scroll, how things, are presented. It's really a neat experience just to see it almost from the other side of the counter.
So how long from start to finish? Well, start to finish. Let's do it this way. When did you start this process? Because now the website's live. You've been using it, I know. How long did it take you to get to the point where you are now?
Yeah. So I believe I bought the domain in I believe the first or second week of December, and I started probably within that week, starting to tinker and build out and watch a ton of videos on starting a website. As far as the number of hours, I would say I probably put in the majority of. Oh gosh, of course I didn't. It wasn't like I was sitting there counting the hours, but probably within a 2 to 3 week span was probably about 80% of the time I've put into the website so far. Those first 3 weeks was a very fair amount of time. There was times where I would make sketches on paper and just kind of think about how I wanted to arrange something. I would outline some things in notes. Then I would begin the designing process on the computer with regards to the WordPress interface. And that particular time, there was one point where I tried something and I couldn't stand how it is, and I tore it down and I just rebuilt something else. And and then as I continued, going through those processes, a lot of the videos that I was watching, a lot of the recommendations were, I'm trying to remember the quote, but to the extent of, if your goal is perfection, you're never going to get there. And as a result, you just need to, at a certain point, say it's ready to launch now. It'll continuously get better. And so that's kind of the attitude I took. And I believe, I'm trying to remember the launch date, but I believe it was probably within maybe 4 to 5 weeks in total of that initial purchase that I actually launched it. And then since that time, I've put in probably about 10 to 20% of that time to making a few small refinements, but mostly there's a section of the website that has current and upcoming projects and presentations I'm giving, and where to register if people would want to attend, as well as past presentations, and just being able to move some of those things from one level to the other level, more of that maintenance aspect of it so far.
I love this because this is exactly what you should be doing with a website. And the advice, whoever gave it to you, that, if you're looking for perfection, don't. Steve Jobs said, great artists ship, because you never get to where you absolutely are super satisfied with it. There's just one more thing. So I love that. I do have to ask, and this could be sort of a loaded question, but I too have not MacVoices, but I have a couple websites on WordPress.com, and I've had cause to interact with their help. I personally have found them super helpful, super responsive. Did you have any discussion with support, or have you just been doing this all on your own and watching videos?
So far, like I mentioned, I haven't had any tech support yet to that level with having to contact anyone from WordPress yet. But I'm so glad to hear that when and if I do, they're pretty responsive. I just appreciate. I went back and forth with Mike Potter a little bit on a couple of ideas. So he's been a good support as far as that's concerned, and just scouring the web of just different ideas and seeing people and their examples of what they've built, and seeing how I could incorporate that, and using some of those particular ideas of layouts, and from that aspect, really, at this point. Yeah.
I mean, I went to the website and, I love it. I think it clearly, in my mind, with no disrespect intended, it's clearly a work in progress, but that's fine. That you did it. they always say that the hardest thing is just getting started, and you did it, and you've got something that is more than workable. It serves a lot of your needs now, and you'll make refinements along the way. And I guarantee you will find more things that you wanted to do, and that's part of the journey. And so
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I found the whole process fun. Did you
I
find
do
it fun?
too.
Okay.
I did. I did and I do. There's, there in anything that we do and anything that we pour our heart and soul into, there's always aspects where we can get frustrated sometimes. And whether it's, frustrations of overcoming something that's challenging, um, sometimes something just won't work right, or you might be my understanding of how I've been looking at WordPress as well as, they just like any other company, they make updates and they put, buttons and settings and things like that in different locations than they used to be a year ago. So if you're watching some sort of a tutorial video from 2 or 3 years ago, you're scratching your head saying, well, that's not there now. And where is that function or that button now? So there's things that come up like that, but overwhelmingly, it's been a fun process, and I look forward to that constant refinement. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I've watched WordPress evolve and add things, and sometimes they add things that either I don't know how to use or that just don't apply to me. But the idea that they're
Mm.
there, and if I decide I want to, I can. And I think it's important to say here that there are no bad choices for any of the services we've mentioned, and there are probably 3 dozen out there we haven't mentioned. That find the one that suits you. The only caveat I would give, and I don't have to give it to Brian because he's made a choice that will let you do this, but make sure that you can get your information out so that if you want to move it either from to a different host or to a different platform, that you can do that easily. Because your needs may change in a year, 2 years, 5 years, and you want to go to something either more powerful or just different. But yeah, I really admire and respect you for taking it on because, as you said, you started out with no knowledge other than, hey, I want a website. And here you are, you've got one that you built with your own 2 hands.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. It's a culmination process of getting help from others, and but it's cool. It's really a fun thing that I've enjoyed doing.
We've covered a lot of things here, but any particular advice you would give to anyone who's thinking about building a website?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, that idea about needing to make sure that it's 100% perfect and ready to go, you just got to overcome it. You just got to overcome that, and that would be probably the biggest piece of advice. Is you can have ideas and what you want to do, and just start putting it up there. And I think that's probably the biggest takeaway. I think there's a lot in the preparation and the planning process too, because while it's perfectly fine to try different things, move things around, you do want some sort of idea of kind of what you want, what you're going for. I think because it is depending on what services and parts of the purchase plan that you make for WordPress, there's labor involved with it, and there's hours that you're taking. If you look at this as a hobby, it's a hobby that you're not doing something else that you also enjoy doing. I think that's something to be said too, is that planning process is important too.
That's an interesting point. Did you have, when you very first started the journey, did you have some idea about what you wanted it to look like? Or was the process sort of driven by, this is what I can do and this is how it fits in with what I want the site to accomplish?
I think a little bit of both. When I first designed, and I made some sketches, just on line paper, just nothing perfect, just kind of outlined a couple of ideas that I had, and then when I started a little bit more detailing as far as the content aspects and putting it into, I used Apple Notes, but you can obviously use anything, just to kind of gather all my thoughts and ideas. I kind of had a particular layout in mind, and I would say probably about 60 to 80%, it's pretty much what I had from that process of what's currently there. But then you learn, you find different tools or different blocks that you can insert in different ways, and then you may be watching a tutorial video and you like how they the particular way that they interfaced, being able to pull up either a testimonial or how they laid something out, and you're like, oh, I like that idea. You may not even know it exists. You don't know what you don't know, and then
Right.
and then you decide to go ahead and include it or try it out and see how it looks, and decide if that's something you want to keep or not. Something that I've enjoyed too is the fact that you can not every not all your pages that you build are necessarily published. So you have that sandbox of playing with it, kind of deciding on your own if you like it or not before you actually bring it up and make it a live link and make it something that is actually happening. So you can kind of toy around with that idea too, which is nice.
You must be reading my mind, because I was thinking about bringing that up, that's one of the things I really was impressed with WordPress.com, is that you can have a staging environment where, yes, you can look at it and you can look at it like it's a live site, but it's not a live site. And so, you see things and you're right. I don't like this, or I want to change that. And you can do it before anyone else ever lays eyes on it. So, but I wanted to compliment you too on one other thing, and that is that too many people, I think, they get their identities confused. You already had an identity as Brian8944 on social media and everyone. That's how people came to know you, and so you just leveraged that into the website. Sometimes it goes the other direction, and then if people aren't paying attention, they find out that, gee, I can't get my preferred name on all the social medias, or maybe I can't even get my preferred name as a domain. And, that leads to maybe just a little confusion. It's becoming more and more common because web domains are getting tougher and tougher to get. Yours is perfect. You had an identity that it meant something to you, and you went with it. So that was a really great approach to it.
Thanks. And on that note, I wanted to add too, something that I had known just a little bit about prior to starting a website is obviously I'm trying to remember the technical term, but the suffix, the .com, as opposed to a .org or a .us, different things. I wasn't necessarily, I like the Brian 8944. I would have been okay with different things, different endings too. That would have been okay with me. It turned out economically .com was the cheapest, and so I kind of went with that. That was something that made sense for me, at least. But I would have been okay with several other options. But so maybe in that regard, if folks are unhappy that they can't find whatever it is that they want .com, they might be able to find a .io or something else that may still serve their needs.
That's a great point. There's so many, not vanity domains, but very specific domains, .music or .tv or whatever. And if that's absolutely all you're ever going to do with it, then that's fine. But selecting one of those domains, that means you're sort of limited. And so you're right. I think .com, .net, there's some other generics out there, but yeah, I've always liked. I want to try to find a .com if I possibly can, because that just feels like I can do anything I want with it, and it's not going to be like confusing to anyone who wants to look up something. So
that's a great point. Yeah.
Brian, again, congratulations. I think it's great that you took it on. I'm frankly, I'm a little shocked at the timeline, because I know you teased that there was something coming a couple times on MacVoices Live, and I had no idea it was a website. But for you to go from a standing start to having something up in just that short amount of time, I think it's a tribute to you, and it's also a tribute to how easy the software is to make it happen.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and it's been fun. I was just at that time of year, I was able to pour in some time, which is nice. And sometimes you have more time than others. And that if I didn't start that process at that particular time of year, I it would have been probably leaning into mid-March to even into summer before maybe that option might have come around again. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But, again, you'll continue to work on it. I
mhm.
know it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So we said it a bunch of times here, but the website is brian8944.com. And that's you on what social medias?
So the ones that you can connect with me on are Mastodon and also Blue Sky and X.
Great. Folks, you can find Brian every Tuesday night, or most Tuesday nights, because we all have conflicts occasionally. Joining me and a host of others on MacVoices Live at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV, and otherwise you can find him on his very own website that he built. Brian, thanks so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yep, we'll see you one of the Tuesdays.
Definitely, for sure.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyer. This is Mac Voices. Two quick things. First of all, I'll have links in the show notes to everything we've talked about here. Brian and I both mentioned Mike Potter. You may know him as Macstock, but Mike also has a web consulting company, ESC Technologies. I'll have links in there to Mike's business site as well, because if you decide that you do need a site, Mike, if you don't want to do what Brian did and you need something a little more ambitious, Mike is a great place to go. So check him out as well. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.